Hello, I'm Jason Roberts. I'm here on behalf of my colleagues at the Duke Marine Geospatial Ecology Lab and our collaborators to present the latest update to our North Atlantic right whale density model, known as version 12 or simply V12. The model combines line transect surveys with oceanographic data and applies a statistical method known as density surface modeling to produce maps that estimate the number of whales per square kilometer, along with maps that characterize the statistical uncertainty in those estimates. I'm not going to discuss details of the methodology today. To learn more, please see our presentation from the 2020 consortium meeting or the documents on our website listed here. To date, the model incorporates surveys conducted by 12 organizations who are all co-authors on this project. Thank you all very much for your collaboration. The model is particularly useful in management applications that require an estimate of absolute density. For example, NOAA uses the model in their right whale entanglement risk reduction decision support tool, which combines maps of right whale density, fishing gear density, and gear severity metrics to estimate entanglement risk. NOAA also recently used the model in the development of new seasonal speed zones designed to reduce the risk of vessel strikes. As I understand it, their proposal utilized version 9 of the density model, but they plan to update their analysis to version 12 after the public comment period for their proposal closes at the end of October. Finally, NOAA often requires this model be used when applying for permits for activities that may incidentally disturb or harm marine mammals, such as the construction and operation of wind energy facilities and naval testing and training exercises. Let's talk about the goals and results for the version 12 model. First, we wanted to incorporate new surveys from 2019 and 2020 and extend the model into 2020. In total, the collaborators boosted aerial effort by 6% and shipboard effort by 4.3%, and we extended the model through September 2020. Here is a map of the total effort and sightings and a table tallying the effort. You can pause the video if you want to review it in detail. I will now briefly show the transects and sightings that were contributed by the collaborators for version 12. Each NOAA Science Center contributed an AMAPS aerial survey from 2019, one in fall and one in winter. These provided good broad-scale coverage, but only one sighting, which was near Cape Hatteras. Here are the surveys from the NEFSC right whale program from June 2019 through October 2020. Numerous sightings were reported, but all were south of Nantucket, except for an entanglement in the Gulf of Maine in August 2020. We do not include entanglements in this model as they represent impaired whales that may not exhibit typical habitat preferences. There were also numerous sightings in Cape Cod Bay reported by the Center of Coastal Studies, which are not shown here. Our density estimates for Cape Cod Bay come from Laura Ganley's 2019 paper, with subsequent updates developed in collaboration with CCS. You can read our Navy reports to learn more about that if desired. Moving on, here we have surveys from New England Aquarium for 2019 through October 2020 in the Massachusetts and Rhode Island wind energy areas, which reported numerous sightings. We also added their surveys of the Canyon National Monument for 2017 through 2020, but no sightings occurred there. Moving south, we added the final year of New York DEC's whale monitoring program, which reported 3 sightings that could be incorporated into our model. There was a fourth, but it was in Beaufort 7, and we can't confidently model detection probability in seas that rough, so that transect was excluded. HDR contributed another year of surveys in the Navy's Norfolk Canyon study area, but did not report any sightings this year. Marine Conservation Research contributed a winter and springtime survey of the Southeast in 2019 that was valuable for boosting sampling of offshore waters in these seasons, but they did not report any on-effort right whale sightings. There was one off-effort sighting over the continental slope near Cape Hatteras, but we cannot include off-effort sightings in the model. Finally, the Southeast Early Warning System teams reported a moderate number of sightings during the 2019-2020 calving season, mostly in the northern half of their survey area. This represented something of a bounce back in sighting numbers from the previous 2 seasons. Once the new data were incorporated, a second goal for V12 was to improve model predictions between Cape Hatteras and Nantucket shoals. To do this, we first investigated the V11 model's predictions with the sightings per unit effort-like analysis to confirm there was a problem, and then adjusted the covariates in the V12 model to fix it. Here you can see our concern with V11. This shows the survey sightings and mean density for the January to March period of 2011 through 2019. We can see on the right that the model was predicting fairly similar density in the mid-Atlantic and south of Nantucket. But we can see on the left that there are far fewer sightings across the mid-Atlantic shelf, but also much less effort. So was the density prediction reasonable? To check this, we implemented an SPUE-like analysis. The goal was to compare density predicted by the model to that observed on the transects. We first applied the model's detection functions and bias corrections to the transects to estimate the sightings per effective area surveyed, or SPEAS. This has the same unit as density and is directly comparable. Next, we needed to summarize the transects and the model predictions over suitable geographic zones. If we had a homogeneous distribution of effort, we could just use square blocks. But effort was very heterogeneous as a result of the varying goals and funding levels of the contributing survey programs. So instead, we defined zones using isobaths and bathymetric features, scaling them according to how much effort was available. I don't claim these boundaries are necessarily important for right whales, but they were better for our analysis here than a traditional grid. Here are the same maps from V11 that you saw, with the zones overlaid. You can see patterns and density aligned with the zones. The model itself was not built with the zones, but included covariates such as depth that resulted in predictions that aligned with them. Now we'll summarize these two maps for each zone. We can see on the right that density, when summarized in these zones, was much more uniform than the corresponding SPEAS metric on the left. Density in the Nantucket zone was only about half the SPEAS there, but down the mid-Atlantic shelf it was 2 to 5 times larger. This confirmed that the model was smoothing density too much. It was not differentiating the Nantucket area enough from the mid-Atlantic. To improve upon this, we need covariates to better explain why right whales appear to like Nantucket so much relative to the mid-Atlantic. Additional surveying in the mid-Atlantic would also help because sighting counts are low. We're collaborating with Nick Record and Camille Ross, who are developing zooplankton covariates that we hope will do a better job. Please check out Camille's presentation at this year's meeting for an update. Those covariates are not ready yet, so for V12 we introduced new covariates to the model that might serve as proxies for the Nantucket habitat. First, we added a bivariate smooth of two spatial terms, distance to Hudson Canyon representing position along the shelf, and distance to the 4,000-meter isobath representing distance across the shelf. We also tested 4 primary productivity products developed by Oregon State University. The new model retained 5 terms in total. You can see the fitted functional relationships plotted here. The colorful plot is the bivariate spatial smooth, with the Nantucket hotspot clearly visible. Next, we can see a positive relationship with fetch, which is a measure of how enclosed an area is. The relationship indicates an avoidance of enclosed areas such as the sounds and bays. There is a negative relationship with SST, consistent with the species preference for colder waters. We see a wiggly but positive relationship with primary productivity expressed through the carbon-based productivity model. Primary productivity is high in the Nantucket Shoals area, particularly in spring. Finally, we see a factor covariate used to distinguish the pre-2010 era from the post-2010 era, which is a strong effect. Here is the V12 model's prediction for the same months. We can see notably higher density concentrated around the sighting south of Nantucket, and lower density extending down the shelf. Rerunning the SPEAS analysis against V12, we can see that the model did a much better job matching the summarized transects. The model density of the Nantucket zone is now 82% of what the summarized transects yielded, indicating a solid improvement. There is not time in this presentation to dive so deep into other regions of the model, but here is an animation showing the final monthly predictions from the V12 model in the middle, the prior V11 model on the left, and the change on the right. The area of highest change was the one we just examined. We can see the density is now predicted year-round south of Nantucket, where sightings were reported every month of the year except October in recent surveys. North of Nantucket, there were additional changes, which I have no time to discuss here, but they were smaller. In the southeast, changes were negligible. This animation overlays acoustic detections from fixed recorders aggregated from many research teams by Jen Davis and her colleagues at the Northeast Fisheries Science Center. Many thanks to Jen and to everyone involved for sharing these data to help us evaluate the density model. You can see that V12 now matches what acoustics have showed for southern New England, which is that right whales are present there year-round. A final big goal for version 12 was to better characterize model uncertainty by building a set of plausible alternative density surfaces that would allow users to bootstrap uncertainty into their own analyses. This is a complex statistical topic, and for details I will refer you to our paper that describes the method. Dave Miller from University of St. Andrews led this project with Duke and the NOAA Southwest Fisheries Science Center. This figure is from the paper and shows maps from a fin whale example from California. In brief, we build a covariance matrix that includes as many model parameters as possible, and then simulate a set of alternative models from the posterior distributions of the parameters estimates. We then predict these across the time series of oceanographic data, producing a realistic collection of alternative density maps that account for variance in the parameter estimates and in the environment. These can then be summarized directly or used in downstream models, such as NOAA's Entanglement Risk Reduction Decision Support Tool, to propagate the uncertainty of our model into their model. That wraps up this presentation. Thanks for watching, and a big thanks to all our collaborators and funders that made this model possible. I hope this model is a worthy result from your hard work. Please contact me if you have any questions or feedback.